Yeah.
And then the Panther
You
thing
say-
came out and saved him. And I forget its line, but I just remember it being like, this is the most sad, depressing thing. Like,
Yeah. Oh, this is the hero or something? Yeah, I don't
yeah,
even know.
I was like, oh no.
So at that point, I was kind of checking out a little bit, but at the same
Me
time,
too.
like,
Hey everybody, welcome to Otaku Flavored Podcasts. I am your host for today, Savage Bear, and joining us is the ever lovely Jay Lewis.
hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah.
I was expecting a lot more like huzzah! going into
Huzzah! I don't know. Just monotone.
Where's the
straight
savage bear attack that I was expecting?
rar. I hate doing that. Okay, don't ever make me rar. I swear to God, if this ever blows up and people ask me to start rarring. Ooh, rar. Okay, that makes it a little better because I already know I can't do it. That actually, I kind of, okay, all right. It's just great start. I actually, oh my God, dude. But yeah.
Not everything can be perfect all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I feel like adding a little bit of like, just, I don't know, that a little bit quietness to my RAR actually makes that a lot more wanting to do it, if that makes sense. I don't know. Normally, it's really hard for me to be like, oh, I can't really do like a deep RAR. Like, I can, kind of. I don't know.
Well, the best thing that you can ever do is just do something ironically, because that means you can at least still do it.
That's true. That actually kind of like something that I wanted to talk about. So for voice acting and things like that, have you ever wanted to voice act in an anime?
Oh God, never in an anime, but there was a lot of potential where I would love to do like voice acting in like regular cartoons or just something more in my like wheelhouse.
Okay, I could see that.
Something like zany and like just out there would be a lot of fun. But I don't know if there would be like, I don't think I'd want to do anything serious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that is something that is really hard to pull off. I feel like in this medium, especially in anime, like looking over dubs and things like that, a lot of the bad parts come from people taking it too seriously and not being able to actually like make it serious. Like, serious moment, oh my God, that person is dying, and you're like, no, play. It's gotten a lot better over the years.
That's definitely true. I think the one thing that I would be afraid of as well is like, even if I did like a joke anime, I think that would be like not where I'd want to sit either. Like, I would really want like some Animaniac style like acting to go on, something Ed and Eddie-esque. Like I would want it
I could see that
as out there as possible, so that way I don't have like anything to like, because when you're trying to pretend to be an actual human, people can tell if you're not doing it exactly correctly, because but when you're animor if you're a cartoon character,
there we go. I was gonna anamorphic or whatever. I can't say it either. Yeah, don't.
Anything that isn't exactly a 1-for-1, like, you can be as out there and it's as forgiving as possible. I think a lot of people, even within your doing anime character stuff, it's like the VTubers that are out there right now. Like, you can be a personality and you can be a lot more different in your tone, in your range, in just the way that you act and express, because when you're doing that as a VTuber, people, like, what would be annoying as a human is forgiven in that range. And I think that kind of extends a little bit into anime and whatnot, but I think you still need to have some talent, and there's no way that I'm going to pretend that I have the talent to do that. So I'd much rather have something as like off the wall as possible.
I could see that. I definitely feel like voice acting is a strange form of acting, because normally you have like, you usually have like other actors there with you and you can see them and you're seeing how they're acting. You can kind of play off them. You also have like the emotion of using your body, which like a lot of voice actors, when I started looking into getting into voice acting, were one of the things that they teach early on is use your body. Like, don't worry about, like, they're not recording you or whatever, but like, you don't want to just stand still and do your lines necessarily. Like, get into
that
it.
Probably translates.
Because it is a hard thing to think about, because you're sitting in front of a blank, usually, like how they record, at least for like dubs and things like that, usually seems like you get put in a booth by yourself and then you kind of like go at it. Basically, you got your script, maybe you've done some takes, you've probably memorized your lines, but it definitely, I don't know, it seems completely, to me, more difficult than actual like live acting.
So I've done theater,
Yeah,
and
so have I.
that is like one of the things. Is like, yeah, I don't. I feel like there is something about in theater is the fact that people are watching you. It's fluid and it's dynamic. So it's one of those things that like I like that because it you continually have to do something. It's like when you're doing broadcasting or a podcast or anything
Yeah.
that's a one take is you just have to, whether it's good or bad, you keep on going. So you'll get an average and you'll break into it. But I feel like doing voice lines for something, you have that constant like start and stop in that repetition. And I can feel like in ways that might be a benefit, but I also feel like that could just allow you to grind yourself out. I don't know. It's a fascinating world, and I would love to get somebody that like has been in that world for a long time. But the fact that you've even thought about it's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, me too. I definitely, it would be really sweet to bring on a guest at some point to actually like get into the nitty gritty of voice acting and things
Yeah,
like
if
that.
any of you guys are voice actors, hit us up.
Yeah.
I don't think we have an email yet, but if we do, it's in the little thing below.
Yeah.
I guess maybe we'll eventually have a Discord or something that you guys can hit us up with. But
Yeah, we'll hopefully by this podcast have a lot of this set up. So we'll see.
we'll see. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I did look into it for a while. Like I've grew up loving Steve Bloom and I always like wanted to emulate him. Of course, he's from Cowboy Bebop. That's where most people know him, or Tom from Toonami. But yeah, so seeing how he worked and hearing about like his background and how he got into it and everything like that really inspired me to get into voice acting. And I've dabbled in it over the years. I've never really got like a demo reel or anything. I'm in a weird place because I don't hate my voice for like podcasts or streams, but like doing character voices, I've never felt good at. Because I'm not good at doing imitations, which is weird. I have a couple friends who are one in particular that I'm thinking of that is very, very good at imitations, and it's almost like disheartening because I feel like imitations are more people would be like, oh, you can imitate this voice actor, therefore you could probably do voice acting. Where I don't know if that correlates, but in my mind, that's kind of what holds me back.
I don't know. I'd never really thought about it in that way. I always figured because there's a lot of voice actors I know that are their characters, they don't change that much. They're there for who they are and what their voice is. And you can pick them up from show to show, and it's not, especially in a lot of Japanese anime, like there's a lot of times where it's a female voice actor. I'm like, that's the same character that from this one, and so on and so forth. So I feel like if you have a unique enough voice, if it's something that's good, I feel like you could just have a character voice of your own, and you don't need to emulate or
impersonate, impersonate
somebody else's voice. You could just probably carry it on your own as long as it's something that you're confident in. And I think that would be the only thing that I would have to like think one would need to consider. But yeah, I think there is the idea that being able to impersonate somebody grants you a higher range, and I think that would be more marketable because then you could probably do anything. But I don't think that would be necessary. But this is me completely novicely not knowing anything.
Yeah,
I would full on like try it out. The only thing I know that I'm not equipped to do is carry a actual tune. So as long as there's no singing involved, or more or less, I will sing. Like you get me out to a karaoke night, and my voice is like punishing everybody because it's your fault. You took me there, and not mine. But
it's good to know. We'll have to hit up a karaoke bar at some point. That actually sounds like so much fun. Because I don't like singing in front of people. Like I'm really nervous about that shit. But I feel like I have an okay voice. Like I can sing all right. But yeah,
me singing is not a thing, but it is a thing I will subject you to. If it is something you put me in front of, it's your fault.
Oh, I mean, I could see that. Like, I could see not you thinking like, hey, man, but who knows, man? Maybe there is like a vocal range that works for you. That's the thing about singing to me that is always interesting. Not to like I don't know if you've watched a lot of Steven Universe, but
I have.
I feel like
have not finished the last season.
The voice actor for Steven, he has really grown on me as far as his voice. When I first heard him sing, I was like, I don't know how well this fits. Like he's singing with some people who are like very good singers. And then slowly but surely, like his grittiness and just the way that he would hold himself got better and better, and he just improved
Yeah.
so much over all of that show.
I feel if I had like somebody to like tutor me, maybe I could
No,
like pull it
yeah.
off. But it's one of those things like I have zero training
No,
for it.
that's how I feel too.
Uh,
I feel like I would improve if someone actually like was like, "Let me teach you how to sing."
It's a shame though, because one of my favorite things is musicals. For anybody who's known me for a long time, yes, not only am I the slice of life weird guy, I'm also the rare breed of enjoying musicals without anybody dragging me to them. And you would think that despite all the musicals that I will sing in front of people, yeah, I just don't have a trained voice for such a thing.
I mean, I don't mind me some musicals. My girlfriend's actually the one who's getting me like way more into it because she's really into musicals. So she'll like drag me to them and be like, "We're watching this because it's a musical," and I'm like, "All right, you know what? I usually wouldn't sit down and just watch a musical, but it's slowly but surely growing on me because I love music, and musicals actually surprisingly usually have a pretty sweet story, and then they get
They
some.
usually
It's like a movie, especially when it's a good movie. It's like a good movie with a sweet soundtrack that is part of the show, basically.
I've never thought of it that way, but that's kind of a true statement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird to take away from that. It's like, okay,
Well, I think I'm also just a product of like original like Disney films and whatnot growing up as a kid. I watched so many of those, and a lot of people won't think of them that way, but they are musicals.
yeah,
They
they
are
are, yeah,
glorified musicals.
100%. I like looking back at it as a kid, I can't think of one that's not a musical, like at least that I've watched.
Yeah, they are at best 40% of it's talking, but most of it, they always break out into musical song,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's part of the charm for them for me, and what grew me into loving and liking a whole bunch of actual musicals later on. Also, the theater kid in me also kind of went that route.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, one of my first plays I was ever in was The Lion King, and that
Oh,
definitely
that's
had some
badass.
singing in it. And then like later on, like I was in Aladdin, which is also a ton of singing in it. And it's weird because when you
Wow.
think of it, like it doesn't come across as like a musical until you're actually there and you're doing your lines, you're reading over your lines, you're like, "Oh wait, no, I have to sing these." That's right. They That's when I started realizing Disney, anything Disney was basically a musical. Because when you're watching it sometimes, like, of course it is a musical. I mean, as a kid, you probably don't know what a musical is. So
Yeah,
it's like a
it's just
cartoon.
entertaining.
Yeah, it's like a cartoon that sings every once in a while.
Which I don't think I can think of a actual
I
anime
was
that
gonna
is a
ask
musical.
that. I was gonna say, I
Uh,
can't think of one
there's some
either.
singing in like Tokyo Godfather, but I
I
can't really imagine in my head like an actual full-blown musical anime.
I know that there's a Death Note musical,
Oh, that
which
sounds
is
absolutely terrible.
like acted and everything like
Something
that
I
on stage.
kind of
It's
want
like
to point
live
out.
action musical. Yeah, I haven't personally watched a lot of it. I have seen a couple songs from it. It's not too bad. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I literally cannot think of an anime that's just a straight musical. Like,
Yeah, if anybody knows one, please let me know because now I feel like my life's not complete until I find one.
yeah, does if anyone
Oh, I think okay, here's the other closest example I can think of like an actual like running thing is like Macross.
Okay.
Because there is the and maybe debatably almost any idol song like
I was gonna say that,
anime,
like,
but
yeah.
that's like them breaking into their talent thing. Maybe the most like singing in Tokyo or what was it? Uh Zombie Saga has a bunch of just like singing for the sake of singing stuff,
Okay.
sort of. But even still, that's all like for their performances and things like that. So maybe that doesn't count, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it doesn't.
Because for me the first thing that came to mind was Carol and Tuesday because it's like the most recent
Right?
anime that I
Yeah.
watched that has a bunch of singing in it.
But they're
And
all performance
but
pieces.
it's
It's a
all
part of the show, and it's not the show purpose.
yeah, because like
Yeah, you know what I mean?
even when they're singing for the sake of singing, it's like they're practicing or they're coming up with something
Mhm.
or it's like a moment where singing makes sense. It's not just like break open door and start singing at each other like
Right, and that's what truly is a musical. You
yeah.
know, singing involuntarily for the normal part of the story.
Yeah.
And I don't think there is any anime that really fits that theme. And I know somebody's going to correct us, and I'm really happy that that's probably going to be a thing. And
Yeah,
I'm
really.
even more sad if it doesn't.
I know. I was gonna say it goes like one of two ways from this moment right here, where I'm like, either someone tells me that there's a musical anime, and I'm like, yes, all right, I guess Jay, we're gonna watch a musical anime, or it's like, oh wait, there's no musical animes. Why is no one doing a musical anime? Like,
Yeah, it's one
untapped market. No.
Kind of. I guess also probably is that's not a Japanese thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of theater stuff in Japan, but is there?
No, exactly. I think
I've never heard of a musical coming out of Japan that I know of.
What I can think of is usually their theater, if it is going to be like musical-esque, because actually, a lot of their theater is musical, like
Okay.
in showing and things like that. Like one of the only shows I went to go see when I was in Japan was basically a musical. I had no idea what's going on because at the time, I mean, I don't speak any Japanese or anything like that, and we were just sitting there watching these people act and sing. But the majority of it was, yeah, break out into song and dance, basically.
I guess I just haven't seen enough Japanese theater. That's something I think I need to change, apparently.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like their set design and everything was absolutely amazing. Yeah, if anyone was wondering, I have no idea what I went to see.
Just for the art.
Yeah, me and my
It's
friend were
fine.
not in charge of that. I could ask my friend's mom, who was the one who took us there, but I don't even know if she would remember by now. But
Wow.
it was a long time ago. Man, thinking about it,
I'm always jealous.
that was like
too.
17 years ago now.
Have you gone back as an adult ever? Or no?
I haven't, but I really, really want to. Once all of this is over with, I'm basically
Yes.
planning a trip to go. Right now, we're looking at what 2021 in sometime in
Okay.
spring.
Man, the tourist season, like it's just gonna get swamped with people that
Oh,
are like,
yeah.
let me leave anywhere I'm
Oh
at.
yeah, straight
Let
up.
me literally visit somewhere else in Japan is just gonna be the densest thing you've ever seen.
It is already, so it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll be able to actually handle that. I might have to wait until that dies down.
Yeah,
But
I feel like Japan is one of those places that once I visited the one time, I was like, you know, I need to come back here more often, and I never have, mainly because of money constraints and anything like that.
yeah,
But now finally, it's like this needs to get done. I mean, I miss this place, so
no, I just want to go anywhere at this point, though.
yeah, I could feel that we're all stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always surprised that I've been to a bunch of different countries, but I've just never gone to any Asian countries, which I think we talked about once already. So I'm not going to go into details with that, but I definitely need to go.
Yeah, we definitely need to plan a trip. I think that'll be sweet. Maybe in the future you guys will see something like some vlog action in Japan,
100%.
which
As
would
soon
be
as I'm over
absolutely
there, it's
hilarious.
like, I'm vlogging.
I swear to God, it'd be so bad. I'm so bad at vlogging. I've tried a couple times. I've like put my hand at it, and it's like, I can't take this. Hello, public
will
world.
it be cringe? Yes,
Oh my God.
It's going to be cringe.
My favorite.
And I'm not going to apologize for that.
My favorite moment I've ever vlogged, which is like, we used to do it when we went on trips. So we would actually stream our trip from where we are to LA, basically. And when we got to LA, we would usually vlog for some time walking around the city walk because we'd be in Universal. And I remember one time we were vlogging and we're like, let's get food. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I didn't think about it. And we just like walk in there and I'm like ordering food while vlogging. And I'm like, this is like the worst thing ever. This feels awkward for every person involved. Like
Yeah.
chat's just
I think that's
yeah.
a thing that existed for sure for a long time is it was either you're the weirdo with the camera or you're the asshole with the camera. But I think it's now just, especially, I mean, anybody that's within our age group or younger, if you see somebody walking around with camera pointed at them, it's no longer those things. You're just blogging. I
No, it's
think you can
weird.
get away with it now in a way that you just couldn't before.
Yeah, no, I think it's more awkward because of how I'm an awkward person in general. Like I don't like
Right.
I don't know. I don't like standing out too hardcore. And vlogging is instantly like, look at me. Like I'm talking to this
Yeah.
camera thing, especially if you're vlogging alone. I could see that being even more awkward in a lot of ways because you don't have like another person and you're like, hey, other person, at least I'm with someone. All right, everybody. I'm not just walking around with a camera by myself. But
I think more people will ignore you now. Like if they see you with the camera,
I
they're
think so
either
as
gonna
well.
walk past you or just like not look at you. As to where if you would have did that 5 years ago when everybody, was first starting with all this stuff, yeah, people just look at you and gawk and like, what is that person doing?
Yeah, no, it is more like people are more accustomed to it now for
Mhm.
sure. Because any of the times I've ever done it, which is now a few years ago, now that I'm thinking about it, but even still, like no one really batted an eye, or yeah, more you just get ignored. Like even when I was ordering food and everything, as I said, like the most awkward moment I've ever had, as far as vlogging goes, and it was they're not like they just ignore you. They're like you're just another person ordering food at this point.
They
Instead
don't
of like I
care.
feel like even a couple years before that, yeah, people would be like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you in here with a camera? Even like this is weird.
Yeah.
Like, why is he
I,
talking to an invisible force?"
yeah, there's all the weirdness that goes along with that. But also the other benefit is if you are doing it in a foreign place, there's even more reason for like, oh, the weird foreigner is videotaping himself in another country. Like that's even more acceptable. And also now there's a language barrier, so whatever. If
I
they're gonna
actually
come up
think
and like yell at you, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I actually think that would be more beneficial to me because one of the things like not that like you're saying stuff at the camera and you're like, "Oh, everyone's listening to me saying this. This is really awkward." But like if I knew a bunch of people didn't understand what I was saying to the camera, I'd be like, "You know
I don't know
what?
what you're
Like I'm totally
saying.
okay with this." Which is
Oh, there's no chance that they don't know what you're saying.
no, yeah. But it's like it's one of those things where I don't know. Sometimes just how people sound like in English, if we're going back to like even like dubbed anime or like voice acting and things like that, some
Yeah.
people when you're just like, man, I hate what you're doing for this character, I hate the voice you're doing. If I was watching this in Japanese right now, at least I wouldn't know how dumb it is. Like I'm gonna be reading the subs, you probably don't sound nearly as terrible as I feel like you sound right now with the shit that you're saying.
Yeah, that quality is you don't actually know if it's good or bad,
Yeah, I mean, at least for me,
but
because
here's
yeah.
the thing. When you're in a foreign country, there's most likely everybody around you knows how to speak English and whether or not they're going to admit it to you. Versus when somebody comes to America, Americans are dumb. We only know one language,
That is
and we
true.
barely speak it well.
Yeah. No, it is very true. Like for me, I've always struggled with learning another language. Slowly but surely getting on that Japanese hype wagon because it's something I've always wanted to do. But as Jay will attest, I'm terrible. Like I'm like worst when it comes to learning stuff, especially
We need to
language, man.
find somebody who can actually speak Japanese to hang out with us. There we go.
Yeah, that would be sweet. That would be actually really cool. But yeah, I don't know if you're up for this, but I put you on a quest to watch a new anime.
Yeah, I thought maybe we would only have the one anime to review this week, but like I don't even know what to say we're going to say about this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you threw it at me. I watched it. If you want to let me know what it is.
So I saw that Onyx Equinox was coming out, and it has someone in the English dub who I really like. I like Aaron Hansen, also known as Ego Raptor. Some of you guys might know of him as Shuffle Master, but
Yeah,
so he's one of the voices in it. So I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot because I was gonna completely ignore it. A lot of stuff, like especially Crunchyroll originals, we've kind of took our take on this earlier, where I feel like they've dropped off as far as what I wanted to watch. So I was like, okay, I don't need to watch another Crunchyroll
yeah.
original.
There, that whole thing has definitely been interesting, but also I think there's multiple ways that we could start this conversation. But really quickly, I want to kind of throw in there: does this thing even look like an anime to you?
No, it definitely feels more like a cartoon, or I would say Avatar. It really feels
Yeah.
Avatar-y.
Well, and there's even a thing to that. Like Avatar, in my opinion, is coherent and really, really well done. I liked the direction that Avatar went with a lot of its stuff. I enjoy the storytelling aspects to it. It feels like somebody had a really good like directing to it and everything behind it. If you can't tell, I'm trying to say I didn't like Onyx Equinox.
I was wondering your take. Yeah.
So I watched it and I didn't hate it. For the animation, actually, the animation looks like American cartoon trashiness, and that's fine. I can categorize it in that because I couldn't even find the Japanese release of it. Could only find the English audio, so I listened to it in English. So it felt like an American cartoon, something along the lines of like an early '90s Sunday morning or Saturday morning cartoon with just the way that everything felt through it. But I don't know if it's the problem with whoever drew all the keyframes for it, and I feel like I'm just gonna be an asshole for a second, or if it's the director's fault. But there seems to be a lot of points in the animation that it cuts to a very specific shot that seems forced, abrupt, and doesn't add anything to the storyline. And then there's obvious parts where it's the director's fault or the original like story designer of narrational parts of the story that just don't line up with any forced continuity, forced like moments into it, because it feels like they're trying to jump from one point to the next really fast. And I don't know how you felt about it. That's my kind of like quick summary before we go too in depth with it.
Yeah, for me, I felt like there was something off. For the longest time, I couldn't tell what fell off. And then I rewatched it, and it feels like there are frames that are missing. Like a lot of the times when I'm watching animes nowadays and things like that, it's very smooth. Like a lot of characters feel like, I don't know, not like disjointed or anything, but anytime anyone was running or anyone was like doing anything that had a lot of action to it, it felt like, oh, this feels almost choppy in a way, which is closer to a cartoon, like what you were saying, like a Saturday morning cartoon feel. But for me, as far as the writing and everything goes, I feel like for a first episode, I think they tried to do too much early on, and then kind of did the one thing you're not supposed to do in narrative writing, as far as I've learned.
Let's put up some spoilers warning really quick.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah.
I was trying to be vague as heck, but I feel like you're about to like drop some stuff here. So if you haven't watched Onyx Equinox,
that's a good point.
I will actually quickly give you guys my summary. There's a lot of things I dislike about it a lot. It is, in my opinion, not an anime. But if you want to watch some good Saturday morning cartoon junk, and you're okay with some blood and gore, I will say watch it, and then come back here and bitch with us. But honestly, I think 99% of people who watch stuff on Crunchyroll are gonna hate it and not watch it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you want to listen to what we're gonna say about it, and maybe you can come back and watch it after you.
My short take is very, very similar. Basically, if you like cartoons and you like the kind of cheesy voice acting and everything that comes with cartoons, it's not a bad watch. Agreed. There is blood and gore in it, so if you're not okay with blood and gore, then I would turn away.
We'll give a little timestamp for when the segment's over in the bottom, so that way you guys can just jump to the next part of this.
Yeah, I want to cut them up like the actual segments too, because you can do that now, which is pretty sweet. But so yeah, as far as spoiler takes, they did the one thing narratively I feel like you're not supposed to do, which is introduce a character, get you used to this character, and then basically completely switch to a new character halfway through.
That was a huge problem too. I was like, okay, this character, it was the female character.
It was the female character at the beginning, yeah.
She's gonna be hype. She's gonna be what the story's for.
Yeah.
I'm full sending here. And I was like, let's see what she does. And there's no relevance into this character. No purpose in them being there at all. They should have just cut between a whole bunch of random people to break it up, because why?
Yeah.
Why were they there?
No, I don't know if they're gonna come back as like a secondary character and they were trying to hype her up, which is what I think they're
market later.
It's just one of those things that I feel like that's what they were trying to do. But at the end of the day, what you do is you get invested in this person because they're your main character. They're the first person you see on screen. You get used to them. I mean, we saw as far as seeing her family and knowing what happened to her family. And you're like, this is okay. I'm kind of invested in this character. Yeah. And then it does a weird cut to the gods, which I actually really liked that part out of everything that happened.
That was a pretty dope part to it. Like, I liked the lore and the world building for it.
Me too.
As soon as they did that in my head, I was like, okay, $10 on the fact that they're going to switch to a young boy as the hero that saves everyone. And I was like, okay, now like it's just going to become like kind of slip off like this possible cool story arc and just kind of go back to like we've seen this before.
Yeah.
They even did the trope of like the gods put a bet against each other, and I was like, okay, this is like for example, like European god styles here, and even though we're dealing with like Aztec and stuff like that, or like I'm not sure what type of gods they're meant to be.
Yeah.
But
It
it's
is.
like Mayan and
It
stuff
is like
that
yeah,
exists.
like Aztec Mayan cultures. I can't.
Yeah.
There is a term for it. But as far as that lore goes, I kind of looked into it a little. They did very good actually.
Okay,
So that
so they are
stuff,
just following like an actual lore then.
kind of. I feel like the gods in those are like do exist. I could be wrong. So if I'm totally wrong, just like roast me in the
Yeah,
comments. But
it just kind of felt like some like Greek god like betting stuff going on. Like, oh, I trust that this mortal, will overcome. But the blood sacrifices and all that stuff. Here's the thing that I wanna touch on. We're jumping all over on this.
yeah,
But
yeah.
did you watch the podcast that they did
No, I
about their own
didn't.
show afterwards?
I didn't actually. I thought about it
So
because I was like, hey, we're probably gonna talk about this like same
yeah,
style.
I thought there was a lot wrong with the show, and I thought the pacing and the way that they introduced characters was wrong, and it felt way too fast of a jump to some stuff, and it felt like they tried to be like, here are these ideas, let's force them in really quick so that way we can A, say we did it, and then B, not have it resolved. I have very little hope in the next episode for this reason. What I'm talking about is they tried to really push in the idea of mental illness and suicide into a character, and they talk about it in the podcast as if they're trying to frame it in a lot of people, I'm sure, they've had experiences in their life, they've gone to various things, but it feels like they even talked about it in a way that felt shoehorned and incomplete, and they're trying to like say they're putting it as part of a narrative when in a way that almost makes it a less authentic to what the character should have been experiencing and moving through. We don't get enough time to get to know him as a heartwarmed kid or who he is in the first place. So trying to say that he has this shock moment that takes him into these areas, which is true, people do have those moments, but we don't have enough time spent with them for when that hits and him falling off the ledge, committing suicide as they were wanting to say it, which yes, sure. All of that feels rushed, and now he's going to be like the hero person coming into the next of this, and all of that like stuff that they want to put on this character, it feels hollow already. How are they going to go forward? And if not, just like he's going to obviously become the powerful person that wins the story. Are they really going to resolve that story, that thing that they want to put out there, that energy that they want to put out there? Are they going to actually give it the time to be digested in a way that actually does talk and explore mental illness?
Yeah.
Why did they try to shoehorn it in a way that really didn't mean anything? And they also tried to do it with a character that, like, if they would have started with the girl who witnesses her parents die in the opening act of the show and brought her to another place where maybe she watches another person die, or like, just give us more. They also just feel like they're trying to use women as a target to show emotion through, and less giving them their own personality and identity for us to give that legacy. That's why I was like, as soon as like they were talking with the gods, I was like, this is going to be a male protagonist. This is going to be a male story, and it's just going to be like every female is just a story device around him, and them killing off the girl that he likes, the girl in the beginning opening the scenes, they're all inconsequential, and it just felt hollow and boring to me. But maybe there's hope. Like I said, there is a part of the show that I do like. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I actually got a very similar feel for as far as liking the show. Like I most likely will watch the next episode because I do want to see what direction they go in. And it does feel more of like cartoon, where it's almost like Batman Beyond or something like that. That's like somewhat serious, but is also a cartoon. But for me, I felt like just moving to this boy they didn't give us enough time at all to really care about anything that was going to happen to him. When they
Mhm.
first split to him, I knew that they were going to do something like that because clearly the gods talk about, oh, we need a new chosen
Right.
one and we need to make him be the weakest person, and they showed already the girl that she was stronger than someone. So
Right, but
I knew that they
yeah.
weren't most likely going to choose her. But it was really weird to me to go from, okay, like in my brain I really wanted it to be her still. I remember when it cut to the boy, I was like, all right, cool, he's gonna be it's gonna show him and it's gonna be like his sister or something. um
Yeah.
and then it like cuts to him and it starts following him, and you they kind of did the whole thing where they're like, oh look, he's not good at what he's doing, like he's very like shy about like what he's doing. He's gonna go sell his work at the marketplace and he doesn't think he wants to sell it this time. And then it gets to the point too where it's like, oh, okay, you guys need to do a blood sacrifice to appease the gods. And I was like, oh, all right, you know what they're gonna do right here, they're going to basically kill off the boy, or say they're gonna kill off the boy, which I think would have been way sweeter if they
I think so
actually
too.
had done that, instead of having his sister like basically freak out and be like, no, take me instead of
Yeah.
him. Because if they had just kept to their guns and been like, no, we're sacking the boy, basically, and then
Mhm.
they kill him and they throw him in and then he comes back to life, or like survives that whole thing and comes, like, that seems like such a sweeter story in
Right.
so many ways already. So once like she was like, oh, I'll accept my fate, all of this, I get it, because I feel like they're trying to show like what I guess it felt like to be a sacrifice. I don't know how many sacrifices were 100% down for what they were about to go through, but
Oh,
like she accepted that unbelievably quickly, to the point
right.
where it definitely felt wrong, like something about it felt off, like,
It felt rushed.
because I feel like normally for all of that stuff, that whoever they were going to sacrifice would have been like, they would have had that person be prepped for it much longer,
Right.
basically.
Usually they would feed and give like that person like a good like sending off type of thing. There was so many rush points to it, but also can we just say that they wanted to like show violence and show aspects to it, and it really shows that they forced it in there. Because don't get me wrong, Alien is my favorite movie of all time. I love horror stuff. I love good slasher flicks. But the cutting of her throat mid sentence in front of the boy that they've already restrained, she's giving herself willingly, and there's like, no, screw you, splatting blood on his face. Like, there was no need for that.
Yeah.
And usually, like, I'm all down for these things, but it felt petty, it felt rushed, and it felt forced. And there's a few different scenes in there. It's like they didn't either need to show some of those things, they could have inferred them, and it would have been way more like demonic and like darker. But showing us, and also how cheesy the animation is, those scenes are goofy because
Yeah.
they're not able to represent or show us in a way that really gives us a feel for it. Honestly, showing us less could have been showing us more.
Yeah.
But also, why did they cut her throat mid sentence? That shit pissed me off. I almost stopped watching at that point.
Yeah,
To not lie.
that actual whole scene in the lead up to that bothers me a ton personally.
Yes.
I hate so much in any sort of media or anything like that, when there's someone who clearly needs to get restrained, who's pushing through a crowd or whatever, and there's like basically guards that are there that are ready, and he gets basically all the way up there and is like, no, don't do this, before they do anything. Like,
Right. He says, "Let me go," right before they actually fully grab on him. He's like, "Let me," and as they're like, he's halfway through that sentence of "let me go," they grab him, and it's just like,
but it's like, I don't know, it's so weird to me, because like he even yells out like, restrain him, and then none of them
yeah,
react. They're all like,
no,
they're
yeah,
like, oh,
it's
you're right, maybe I should restrain this kid, that's probably, you're probably, let me just waltz all over. Like, they could have also made that whole scene crazier, because he could have ran up and grabbed the knife and been like,
right.
no, don't sack her, and is like standing there, and then she's like, don't worry about it, and then basically does it herself or whatever. And like, there's so many moments where for me
So many moments.
the writing just wanted, like, they kind of like tunnel visioned, I feel like
Mhm.
they know what they wanted basically, and to get
But
there they just
did they?
did. Well, I think they like, I don't
He
know.
does run all the way up to the top of the temple, almost slitting his wrist just to run all the way back down the temple and to her. And there's
That's true.
so much time of that's wasted in a show that's already being rushed.
Oh man, that's
I
so
don't
true.
think they knew what they were doing. Honestly, the more that
I
we talk
even
about this, I'm
I
still
actually
trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to watch the second episode for, and I know I'm going to, but it
it's
is
so funny. I forgot the scene where he runs up and he's basically ready to like, God help me, which would have also
Yep.
been really sweet. Like they're
and
like,
that's the thing. Like, I almost wondered if it was a budget and keyframe problem where they needed to use certain animations because there's obvious cuts in that running of him going up there that felt like they were already drawn, already ready to go, and they needed to use them because they couldn't do more. Versus necessarily maybe 100% the director's problem.
oh,
So
interesting.
maybe there's the director kind of got forced into using stuff that they didn't really like, or maybe it's just a problem on all fronts. Maybe it was original writer's problem, which is obvious the way that some of this stuff just doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
Two, the director's cutting and trying to rush stuff as fast as they can, and then three is maybe they just I don't know if the budget was completely there because it really feels like some of those frames, some of those moments are just so shockingly like put in there, like they don't fit
Yeah.
correctly.
And now I'm thinking about it, like, is this based on a webtoon like the other originals are?
Oh, that would have been a good thing. I listening
actually-
to the podcast, that wasn't the thing that I picked up on because there's so much of them just talking
That is something.
constantly about mental illness.
Now
and
that like when
suicide
you
and-
were talking about it, I'm like, huh, that does make me wonder because webtoon format, this actually a lot of this doesn't seem as jarring when I'm thinking about it because they're
in
just
panel
it's just
form?
panel form. Yeah.
maybe, but that
you just
when you're
reminded me
adapting
that
something, you need to take liberties with it to make sure it flows correctly.
the panel where or no the scene where like it's right in the very beginning. It starts off very quick basically. For me, which was a little weird. Like it almost felt like they wanted to do these giant epic god battles like immediately. This weirdly enough for me, that first episode, that whole scene felt like the end of like an arc or the end of something, which was really
That's your shonen showing.
no, it really is though. But it was really funny because for Crunchyroll screwed up when they first uploaded the English version because it said season 11, episode 1, and I was like, wait a second, because I remember I actually got up to the point where he like the first chief guy slits his throat like immediately, and basically like the blood runs down and then summons the gods or whatever, and I was like, wait a second, like all of this is going down the destruction of this whole city. Is there am I missing something? So I paused it because I realized it had said season 11, and I went back to try to find a season 1. I was like, wait, I'm 11 seasons into this thing. There's got to be more. There's got to be more for this. But it was like, nope, this is just where it starts. But I definitely feel like they wanted to grab your attention really, really quick. And in order they felt to do that, they needed to brutally show a lot of this, like a lot of the like the blood and the gore and the whole like slitting the throat, bringing the gods in. One of the gods even gets ripped in half immediately and his blood's drinking basically. Like I feel like they wanted to do a lot of the shock value, like look how crazy this is on a level, like we're demolishing a whole city and things like that. And once it got to the point where they were on the outskirts or whatever, where there's like the line of rocks which they can't touch, where I was like, wait, why don't we have, like, why don't you have a thing for that? Like, this is getting weird. How do they even get in there? That's a whole nother point. But once they got down to like the 4 gods, other gods, and I don't know if one of them was the spirit god that flew off into the sky, because I'm like, I can't follow what's going on now. Like
those,
it's weird because they're like talking about the underworld god, and you're like, okay, so that was the big dude that showed up, I'm pretty sure, who didn't want to show up to this party.
Drank the blood of the other dudes.
So it's like, and they're like, yeah, he's taking all our blood sacrifices, so that's why we need to do all this stuff. And you're like, wait, I don't understand. I get the plot because you're like, I need to shut the gate to the underworld. That sounds kind of sweet, not gonna lie, but like,
right, like there is some aspects of this that are there, but also some of those aspects are probably just lifted from other lores. That's aside, is can I just say one of my funniest scenes early on in the entire show is the moment where she the girl that doesn't matter yells for her father who's trying to save her mother, and she's all like, "Father, no!" and immediately drops to like helping somebody like out of the hole. She's like,
Oh my god,
"Father, no! Oh, let me help you."
Yeah.
It's like, wait, where was this person? Were they like falling the whole time, and you're just like now mid sentence, like mid like realizing your dad's dying, like, oh, I should probably help this person.
Dude.
Like, it was the weirdest cut in
Oh
the
my
opening
God.
that just made me laugh so hard.
I love the part personally that like reminds me of a part where like she gets her dad out, like totally beast,
Mhm.
right? And then they see their mom and he sees the same piece that she used, right? And he's like, I'm going for it. And he gets down there and fails so miserably. And I was
Yep,
like,
it's-
wait, so you're telling me the effect of this thing is not the same on it as your daughter did? Like, because I really expected him to like get her out and basically be like, all right, cool. And then they get swarmed or whatever. But he didn't even do that. He like touched it, saw her, was like, I love you too, and then got wrecked. Like,
Yeah. So I
immediately.
think that shard is supposed to be one of the obsidian shards.
It is a
from the
piece
thing.
of the stone, yeah.
Yeah, and it's supposed to have some effect. And I kind of thought maybe that's like they're gonna be the hero. They're gonna grab like those shards and do stuff with them. And dude, this show is just so over the place. It doesn't know what it wants to do, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
well, that opening scene I really felt like is 100% a throwaway to either
Mhm.
set her up as a secondary character where she'll be like this grizzled old, like, not, she won't actually be old, but she'll be like the veteran
Yeah.
from the city who saw a bunch of stuff that the boy will run into. And I mean, I could totally be wrong. They might have just completely thrown away all of that, but because they talk about it so quickly, there was those two other people who were at the other village, that were the survivors that no one was looking at or giving food to, that he was nice enough to give food to. That was just, it was really weird because it felt like they needed to do that whole sequence to make them make sense, basically.
Right.
Because but it didn't need that. Like, you
No,
could have held
it
off
didn't.
that whole part basically for later in the show, and it
Mhm.
would have made a lot more sense with us starting with the boy, basically having him come to market. There was some terrible event that happened to these two women. No one wants to talk to him. You're intrigued. You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, showing less could have been way more.
They
We
could
could have
have-
had an entire mystery of what occurred in the city.
Yeah, well, they could have even cut
Been amazing.
into that later. Like, basically,
Yeah.
if they had paced it with the beginning part being the boy, you're introduced to the boy, all that happens, and then they cut, like, later on to the destruction of the city. They don't have to even, like, necessarily follow the girl's point of view. They could have, I think that doing what you said earlier, which is cut to a bunch of different point of views throughout the city, like, you could have done that as a second episode, and it would have
Yeah.
been much better because you still got the destroying of the Payson. I just feel like they did this because they wanted to reel you in. As I said, they wanted to be like, look, we got giant gods, look, there's
Right.
blood sacrifices, look how dark and crazy this is, and now calm down now. Because that's what makes me wonder if it is a webtoon and if that is actually
Yeah,
later on, and
could be.
whoever was directing and things like that was like, no, we need to put this first, or earlier on. But I'll look into that after.
Yeah, maybe.
I didn't even
maybe
think
when
about
we
that.
Talk about episode 2.
Maybe we'll have some better
We'll see what
info on
happens.
that. But yeah, I guess my whole thing is watch it if you like bloody Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah,
And,
watch it for some old school feel.
Yeah, I actually really liked Aaron's part. Aaron plays one of the gods. I think he did very well.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I actually do like how he came across. He was the one that like had smoke constantly coming out of his mouth. And there was some
Okay.
artistic stuff that was really sweet, like the smoke clouds are all squarish basically and things like that I was like, okay, that's really cool. It does have like this sort of Aztec feel because a lot of their architecture is very rigid. So there were little moments and things like that I really did like, that I thought were interesting. But overall, the story right now, it is a dumpster fire, and I think that's why that I'll watch a second episode, is because it's like a train wreck or things like that, where you're like, where's this even gonna go? Like, this is so, like, when he jumped off, and I was like, okay, he's just gonna drown, and then they had him hit his head, and I was like, okay, like, can we just stop for a second here? Like, he wasn't gonna make it anyways. He had like given up on life, man. He was just gonna drown. Like,
Yeah.
and then the panther
But you
thing
say-
came out and saved him. And I forget its line, but I just remember it being like, "This is the most sad, depressing thing." Like,
Yeah. Oh, this is the hero or something. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
really
I
know.
was like, "Oh no."
So at that point, I was kind of checking out a little bit, but at the same
Me
time, like,
too.
yeah, we'll see where this one
We'll
goes.
see where
Do
it
we want to
goes.
end our small talk here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So,
'Cause there's kind of a question that I want to bring up in general, and I know my personal answer to it, but I want to know your answer
yeah.
since you already flopped a little bit between the Avatar aspect and this aspect, and whether or not those are actually anime. What is an anime to you, and is that an actual thing that exists?
So, I guess like my default go-to for anime versus cartoons is where was it created? So it's like, is this an American cartoon for like Nickelodeon or things like that, or is this actually like created in Japan? The weird thing for me is that line's being blurred more and more. Like I don't know, like I'm not like you, so I'm not like a studio buff. So I actually
Right.
don't know if there's any of my favorite animes or animes that I've watched that I enjoy that are not actually out of Japan or Asia, I should say.
Yeah.
Um
Well, if you look at Tower of God, that is from a webtoon. That's South Korea, and there's a lot of studios in the Philippines or in South Korea that actually do most of the animation nowadays as well. So a lot of the anime that we do watch is produced somewhere else. So it's not even technically there. And people will call stuff anime that's not anime just because it looks anime. Like when you look at something like the Castlevania series, which
yeah.
was
Okay. Yeah, that's
done in
actually a good
Texas.
one. Yeah.
Uh,
Because I do feel like the Castlevania series is basically an anime. I would say that that considers as an anime to me. Mainly
But the
because
writer, the artist, everything was done in Texas.
yeah.
There's not a single bit of that that was done overseas.
I think that's why I said like my lines for it are a little bit more blurred than they used to be, because it used to be very cut and dry. It'd be like, this is anime because this is made in Asia, like in Japan mainly. Um and then this is a cartoon that's made it for Adult Swim, or it's made basically here in America. Nowadays, I think my line for what is an anime versus what is a cartoon is the content within it. So
Yeah,
like and not to say anime can't be cartoonish and not to say cartoons can't be anime-esque, but cartoons to me are usually smaller, like episodes that don't necessarily carry on together, and a lot of the comedy that's within it feels very much more like dick jokes, I guess, and things like that, because I love Rick and Morty, and
yeah,
Rick and Morty is definitely more like bathroom humor, or I mean there's some highbrow humor in there, of course, but Rick, it's like that falls more into a cartoon than I would say like I'm watching Konosuba right now too, which is also very in the vein of being like
right.
stupid and funny and things like that, but how they handle it and where they are feels very more anime. I guess it's like the reactions of people. Now I'm really starting to like think about it, like how people react to things. Because
The mannerisms.
yeah, because in anime and things like that, you have very specific ways your characters react or act to certain things, and
Well,
same in
see,
cartoons. Like
now you're getting into a really weird situation because now you're almost saying anything that acts foreign to your identity would be anime because there's a lot of stuff that is Chinese animation that people think is anime or South Korea stuff that they think is anime. And I'm pretty sure a lot of those, if I showed you those, you would probably just say that they're anime because they have foreign aspects to it. But there's a lot of things that people, unless you're familiar with those cultures, you're not going to be able to distinguish them that well. It's like whenever you see like a geometry pop up in media and everybody's like, oh, this is completely anime. And you're like, no, that's usually a Chinese culture. Sure, they're in other cultures a little bit, but you can usually tell sometimes when you're more familiar with it whether or not it was from another country. So is it that you're trying to say that everything that is foreign to you in mannerism is anime?
I guess like in a way, especially when I first watched anime and things like that versus cartoons. But I guess
Okay.
what I'm more trying to say is that like when you have like So like in an anime or something like that, maybe something cute will happen and they'll turn around, they'll get like the little kawaii face, they'll get like really like close to their face, they'll get the star eyes or whatever. Not to say that doesn't happen in cartoons, but when that happens in like a cartoon or something like that, it's, I feel like, more trying to emulate anime than it was trying to be a cartoon, because like a cartoon, like when something cute would happen, would do like hearts or like, I don't know, I guess they still do that, but I'm trying to think, because like
Yeah.
I'm thinking Animaniacs right now,
Freaking
like
break you
Dot.
here.
Yeah, straight up actually. I'm like thinking like Animaniacs Dot versus like your waifu when she looks at you and is like happy basically.
Yeah.
And in my mind there's a difference there that I can't really correlate. Like
Mhm.
just how the style is and how the characters are holding themselves, I feel like are different. So
I think the line existed once, and I think it's a line that existed back when anime was definitively a thing that was coming over to America, and we had a different, a small select things that these are the animes. And now that all the things are coming around here and we're being exposed to everything, I think honestly, the way that we will view this in another 10 years, or even sooner than that, is the same way that Japan views it already. When they see an American, when they see something from Disney, when they see Ed, and Eddie, or they see an American cartoon, they just call it anime. To them, that is their word for animation. And for us, I think eventually the word animation is just going to blend completely as well. I think
yeah.
words are separated. They never have been, so they don't have unique words for it. They don't call our stuff cartoons, unless I'm wrong. Somebody can correct me. But I feel like that's how it's going to be in the long run. Is it's a homogenizing word. It's all going to come together under one thing, because we already are having that problem of like, we're not calling the Japanese stuff a different name. We're not calling the South Korean or Philippine things different names. We just have a small word for a few things in the early like 90s from America, and stuff that we still recognize from back in the day from over in Japan. Nothing new fits in those categories anymore, except for very extreme cases like very Americanized cartoons like American Dad to Family Guy
Family
and
Guy, yeah.
Rick and Morty. They're like, there's things like that, but honestly, either we're gonna have a new word for them all, or they're all gonna become the one thing.
Well, something that's
And
interesting about that is because, like, for my parents and things like that, anime, like, when I was first talking about it with them, they're like, oh, the Japanese cartoons. So I feel
right,
like, in a way, like, people do think of anime as basically Japanese version of cartoons, which, I mean, that's what they are.
it is. Yeah,
Um, it's just one of those things where I feel like anything that's foreign animation will basically be seen as anime, but at the same time, as you were pointing out, Castlevania feels very
Mhm.
anime. But I guess a lot of people would still see that as a cartoon, other than
Yeah.
maybe
It's not
me.
anime.
But
Like, if people want to have terms on it, it's 100% not anime.
yeah, because it's an American cartoon that is
Mhm.
in an anime style, basically, which
Right.
is, it's interesting because, as I said, like for me, it more comes down to the style of the cartoon for me nowadays. Like
Right.
a cartoon to me is like Rick and Morty, and then an anime for me is like, yeah, I guess like
I'm just
Castlevania.
saying, let's see in 10 years if we're still holding on to these definitions.
I think
I
we
think it's,
will. Weirdly enough, I think in
I
America we
think
definitely will.
when as it becomes more and more mainstream, I think that idea is going to lose
Okay.
ground more and more.
So
And especially since if you look already at like the way that a lot of streaming services do have it, it's not always labeled anime on everything.
so that makes me wonder, so do you think that here we're going to call everything a cartoon instead of calling it anime? Or do you think that we'll just start calling our cartoons anime?
I think what we'll start doing is we'll start calling cartoons in America animations.
Okay.
And I think that it will be as close to anime as already. And I think those things will just bleed to where you're free to call all of them just an animation in general. Because it's almost like in the same way, like some people don't refer to the Disney cartoons as much as they just call them by what they are, or say that the Disney stuff.
Yeah.
Like it almost just feels like as it becomes more mainstream, they're all going to blend into one thing. And you already see a ton of them in the same category. I see a ton of American cartoons in anime tabs as well. So vice versa, if they do have an anime tab on a place, a lot of times everything animated is in that section. And if they don't have it, then everything's in the cartoon section. It just feels like it's all going to come into one giant snowball, and we're just going to refer to them roughly the same. Maybe there'll be a few different words here and there, but the cult classic like anime feel and vibe that we used to have is kind of the old pillar that exists from those who watched anime back when it was definitively something else in everybody's eyes, and it was the outside thing. But the mainstream stuff, I think it'll all be the same.
I could see animation taking over, like if anything, for a blanket term for everything, because I do see that already in some like cases where like an anime movie will come out, and instead of people calling it an anime movie, they'll just call it an animation. Right. And I've also seen that also termed for Disney movies and things like that, where they're animations. They're not Disney cartoons. They're Disney animations.
Yes, so Disney animation. That's what I kind of wanted to think about. Yeah.
So I could totally see it going that route in the future. I don't know if it will though. I am in the camp that I'm pretty sure, as far as where I am in America, we're so slow and so like stubborn to switch over to anything new.
We are, and I think that the old guard will hold out for that for a long time. And I don't think it's us who are going to make that change.
Yeah,
I think we are the people who are stuck in the past already with where and who we are. But the younger generation, the more that they come up, we grew up with. These are our things in our American like morning cartoons that we are watching.
Yeah.
This is the weird stuff that we have to try and go out and get. They're growing up with it all together at one time.
Yeah.
So they don't have that barrier already. So what's to say that when they're teenagers, when they're young adults, they're just going to call it all the same thing because it's always the same thing. It's like back when we were kids and we used to call Cardcaptor Sakura and more early morning cartoon, like Japanese stuff that was dubbed here into English, we just thought they were cartoons.
That is true. Yeah. Like when Pokemon originally came out, yeah, it was a cartoon to me. It was not an anime.
Right.
It's really weird though.
The more I think that line's going to disappear.
That is really weird because for me, like when you were first talking about that, my defensiveness was like, don't take away my anime, Jay. Like I want it to be known as anime. Like, it's strange. It actually was really strange. And I'm like, wait, I really don't care what we call it at the end of the day, as long as I can communicate to you what I'm talking about. But that would be really strange because like over time, instead of being an anime podcast, but I mean, we're more of like popular culture podcast in a way, because we talk about a lot of things, with anime being like the focus, but we'd be known as an animation podcast, which would be strange. Like, I'm like, I don't know how many animations I watch. And then I'm over here, I'm like, oh, wait, I guess I watch a lot of stuff that's animated. So it's like, huh, I guess this makes sense. Like, it's just really strange. Yeah, that is an interesting question, because I do feel like a lot of people will take the same stance, which I did originally, which is like, how dare you say that they're going to take away my anime? I don't want it to be known as animation. I want it to be known as anime. I am an anime fan. I am a weeb at heart. Okay, you can't take this from me. But like at the same time, it's like, it almost makes more sense, because what's to say that an American cartoon isn't like in Japan wouldn't be an American anime, basically? And what's to say like for over here it's a Japanese cartoon? So it's almost better that we have a blanket term that's like, no, all of this is animation, because that is what it is. At the end of the day, everything that's being created, that's drawings and that are moving, is an animation. So that does make a lot of sense. I don't know if it ever will though. I'm still in the camp that I don't think it's going to happen in 10 years, but I don't think you get to have that call. I don't either. I literally don't, but
will be the kids that are watching stuff right now, and as soon as they're 18, as soon as they're in their 20s, they're the ones that are going to be saying it, and we will be the old adults. We will be in our 40s and 50s acting as if that's anime, and then they'll be looking at us and be like, oh, dad or grandpa, you're just old.
Yeah.
Like the same thing that we do with our parents.
We don't call this anime anymore. No, that is really true, which is strange. It's like,
This
Um,
is the hill you'll die on and be known as the old guy for.
no, straight up. It's going to be really, that's kind of interesting to think about because it is true. It is not up to me. And it's like maybe within my circle and where my age group is, it'll forever be anime, but that doesn't
Right.
mean that it's not going to become a thing for everybody basically to just consume and call it whatever it is basically because it is animation and for a website and things like that categorizing it as animation makes it a lot easier because it's like here's everything basically.
Yeah. And the casuals outnumber us is the other thing you got to think about.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
We are the
100%.
diehards. They are more of them than us.
Yeah.
And whatever they go with will get moved into that category as it becomes mainstream for them.
Yeah. Well, I will die
And
on
we
this
will
hill,
be-
so
I
uh,
think, yeah, I think there is still a world in which like we will still have the like hardcore anime guy that still exists, but I think even that is going to be the thing. Like they're going to become their own niche in their
yeah.
own little area, and then there's the even deeper side of it of the people that are into the very perverted side of anime and think that that's a side that needs to be promoted. I'm on neither side of this hill. I'm not trying to stand on any hill here, but it's there was a small short series that I saw pop up at the front of Crunchyroll the other day that is basically softcore hentai, and my favorite comment slash I hope it's a joke and I know it's not, of nobody forced you to watch this. And then what was it that trickled from there?
It was like basically like you normies are ruining anime, and this is what you do to like all things like movies and video games. Yeah,
yeah. And it was just like the most like random blow to like nobody who was like I don't know who he's fighting here, or what he's trying to say about himself. And obviously, this man loves himself some nice cultured moments, and congrats to him. But that is definitely a side of it that I think as it becomes more normalized and more normies and everything else comes into it, and more people who just it's a part of their day. It's not the thing that they do. That's going to be the like the weird off case as well, even
yeah.
further, because I love anime. I have tons of anime stuff around me, but back when we were growing up, I never talked to anybody about anime. But I also foresee like as people become casual with it and everybody starts, they've seen an anime. I hate saying it that way. I'm always still going to probably be the hardcore anime nerd out of those people and still be weird, I guess. I don't know where that's going to go.
No, well, it's one of those things where it's just you'll basically be able to talk to these people about like these people. You'll be able to talk to someone about anime who's only watched, let's say, like a couple episodes of something, basically, because now it's so common that you see animes and things like that you'll be able to talk to them about hopefully something that you're in common with, but you'll slowly but surely or quickly learn that that is like a puddle versus your ocean, basically, where you're like, dude, that's so cool, like, have you started this, have you done this, have you done that, and they're like, no, I mean, this is as far as it goes. But I do feel like that's like video game culture for me, because I remember when I was growing up and things like that, we were like the nerd kids who would have LAN parties and play video games. And now, like, looking at everything, everyone I know basically plays video games unless they're over a certain age and they just don't like tech, basically. But if you have any sort of like tech or can do anything, people play like games on their phones. I count that as a game. Like, sure, you're all gamers to me. Like, that's fine. But it is a weird thing to be a hardcore gamer that has grown up playing games my whole life, and that's the most media probably I ever consumed is video games, and then seeing everyone being like, oh yeah, this is normal now, and it's like, yeah, but you guys have not been as deep or playing for as long like, so it's kind of strange. It is one of those things where I can relate to a lot of people and talk to them about video games, but then you start finding out that it's like, oh, well, yeah, you've played quite a few games, but nothing in comparison to what I've played. So we kind of, I don't know. A lot of my conversations with people will actually stem into whatever their favorite game is, or which is probably similar to you for anime.
This is actually the premise of where my argument with anime actually stems from, is the video game industry and the fact that it is normal now. And even back in the day, you would have people who are like, I'm a JRPG person, and people who are like, oh, I'm a American Smash 'em Ups. And there's people who had like defining guidelines, but now it's all just gaming now.
Yeah.
And if you play an RPG, doesn't matter if it came from Japan or America. They're RPGs now.
Yeah.
And that trope is blend. And I think that's the same way that anime is heading.
Yeah.
I think every last thing that you've seen happen in the gaming industry is a thing that's going to occur in the animation industry.
Okay, I kind of actually more understand what you're saying now, because it's basically like everyone's going to become a gamer, basically. So it's like, so
gamers, all playing games.
We're basically going to all be otakus at some point, or we're all going to be weebs, basically. I don't know what term we'll blanket everybody with, but everyone who's ever watched a single episode of something is instantly in that category. And yes, that will 100% happen. And it does make me wonder what people will adopt for that, because anime is a weird one. Anime is like, as far as terms to describe yourself as an anime fan, not a lot of people when you're talking are like, oh yes, I am anime fan. But I mean, you do get that, of course, but it's usually like, oh yeah, I'm a weeb, you're a weeb, cool, like we're weeaboos. Or it's like, oh, you're an otaku, I'm an otaku, like, and it's usually these type of terms that I don't know if that will become a blanket term. I more see anime fan like as gamer, animator. Yeah. I'm coining it now. Okay, we're all animators. Welcome, my fellow animators.
I think you'll just be lopped in with nerds.
Yeah, I think so too, actually. Yeah, which is basically what's happened. It's really weird too to see that cultures that growing up would get you beat up or get you like completely thrown into a weird social circle have now become so adopted and so normal that, like,
I would have never dreamed about talking about any of this stuff back in high school.
No, right? Yeah.
Or younger. I just never did. This is the thing that I hid from everybody. My family, until I moved back to California, and like, I think they didn't know that I was into anime stuff until probably I was like 26 or something like that. They're just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You are interested in these things? And it's like, yeah, I just never had anybody around me to ever talk about.
Which is that. It's interesting for me because I'm like in the whole other camp, which is like I've basically been the nerd or been the kid that's into video games and anime and that type of culture, like the geek, like all of that type of stuff forever. And I've totally wore it like whatever. But I mean, growing up where I've grown up, there weren't a lot of people that were going to bully us basically because we were nerds or we were this type of stuff. Mainly because I feel like, I don't know, where we grew up, it was very stoner culture, very like laid back, or at least for me, like I grew up in Santa Cruz, so it's very like hippie, basically hippie town, a lot of people would call it, or very surfer town. So it's a lot of like, oh cool, you're into that, I don't know what it is, but you do you, man. So it's like, I've never really felt ashamed enough to be like, you know, I don't want people to know that I'm into anime or I'm a gamer that plays games way too much. So it's, yeah, it's been weird. And I've also had friends that I've surrounded with basically early on to be able to get into these things with. Anime, not as much. Like we watched some anime, like Cowboy Bebop was the one that brought us into all being together as a group and started watching anime. We kind of all went in our different directions as far as that goes. But it wasn't as much as like video games and things like that, because I didn't have like a lot of people to talk about anime, but I had tons of people to play video games with. Like, so I don't know. It is interesting to think that we're coming into an age where that's not going to be a thing as much. Like anime is on Netflix right in front of you. Like a lot of the suggested shows and things like that people get nowadays are anime. And it's strange to think that culture has accepted these things, or like as far as like video games go, they're on your phone, they're so readily available for on your computer or anywhere that you're going to be able to play, that if you don't know what a video game is by now, it's very strange, and you're definitely the minority. It's insane to think how much these cultures have grown even in the span of like my lifetime, which is 30 years right now. So
yeah.
It does make me wonder what's going to become the next norm. But
yeah, what's going to be the weird niche thing on the outside of the culture?
All right, I'm pushing for hentai, everyone. It's normal, okay? It is art.
That is just art. Yeah,
it is just art. Okay, we can save that for another podcast. So you guys, thanks for hanging out with our discussions and everything like that. So we're gonna hop on over to Anime Club. I don't know the best way to do these as bookends. I don't know if you want to just do a sign off right now and just say goodbye, everybody, and
figure
then
it out. But yeah, we're off on our own, guys. Come and join us if you guys want to talk about the latest thing that we watched, which was
The Promised Neverland.
I had already forgot the name.
Yeah, you're all good. No,
we have some stuff to say about that. We'll try to keep stuff that we want to talk about that are super spoiler heavy, that are the book club style things, off on their own little separate things. So come join us for that, guys. If you want to know what we're going to be talking about next week, we're going to be talking about it at the end of that episode as well. And we'll be releasing them as their own standalones if you guys want to just check them out. But if you guys want to just hang out and watch what's coming up next, hey.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some Promised Neverland.
Basically, I think what we decided is we're going to end each of these podcasts with the Anime Club, but it'll be like it's sort of its own little content. So we'll be signing off for the podcast here. It will be at the end of the podcast still, but but it will also be its own little thing. So
we'll get better at this part later, guys.
Yeah, 100%. This will become normal. Like, we won't be explaining everything as we're figuring out what we're doing with our lives. But thanks, you guys, for all coming through, hanging out to this point. If you would like to hop off the podcast, I'll see you guys next time.
Yep, we'll see you next week, guys.
Bye, you guys.